Good afternoon, my beautiful babes and babettes. I apologize for my lack of upload on Friday. By the way, I'm your resident active advocate. Thanks for noticing. But I apologize, good job, Rain, for my lack of upload on Friday. I got about 5 hours of sleep on Thursday night, and Friday, my brain's just like, we are not here today. There is nothing going on up here, nothing. So I kind of figured I might skip it because you don't want me talking about something this important when my brain decides to take a vacation on me. Good job, brain. I love you, but you can be annoying. So we're back, and it will be 4 more videos on the TRC because the next 3 chunks, the last 3 chunks of the what are they called? I'm sorry, calls to action to read out. And then the video after that will be on the ones that were actually acted upon thus far. And as I have said, I believe there are only 6 of those. So that'll be a quickie, unfortunately. I wish it could be longer. And, you know, colonizers, settlers, I prefer settlers. Actually, colonizers has a more active use to it, but settlers are just non-Indigenous people who are here, okay? I am a non-Indigenous person who is here, but colonizers need to stop colonizing, but settlers are the ones who need to take responsibility for the wrongs that have been done and continue to be done, which is why I'm doing this in the first place. For as pretentious as it might sound to tell other people what to do, this is important, okay? This is about our fellow humanity, and I am a humanist, so I think it's important to act in the best interest of other people. But that's just me talking, and I'm a bit of a twerp, I'm not going to lie. However, we shall continue today with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which is a lovely, lovely thing, and it's also infuriating. And I am going to stop babbling and maximize my document. Alright, so, under the heading, still, of National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, okay? We start today on call to action number 81. 81 of 94, by the way. 81. We call upon the federal government, in collaboration with survivors and their organizations and other parties to the settlement agreement, to commission and install a publicly accessible, highly visible residential schools national monument in the city of Ottawa to honor survivors and all the children who were lost to their families and communities. Okay. I do not know whether this has been done. I really hope that it has. This is critically important because they do use the words highly visible, okay? But that just, in my mind, that does not just equate to actual physical vision. That equates to the knowledge that this thing is there, why it is there, and why it is important that it be there. Ottawa is the national capital of Canada, okay? We have 10 provinces and 3 territories in this country, and all of them have their own individual capital cities. For example, the capital of the province I live in, Ontario, our capital is Toronto, but Ottawa is also in Ontario, okay? So the reason why this is important is because that is our main seat of government. That is where our federal parliamentary buildings are. And it was the fault of the federal government that these things happened to begin with. So this is a very visible, or shall I use the word tangible, sensible, able to be sensed sign of the fact that they acknowledge that these things happened. Not only to acknowledge the murders, I am using that word, the murders that were done, but also to acknowledge the people who have survived. And as I have said, this system lasted until 1997. I can remember 1997. That is not good. All right? It should never have started to begin with, but it should have ended a lot sooner than that, having started at all. And I still say, and I will always say, it is a national disgrace that we jumped on that bandwagon. Because I can say, oh, we got the idea from America, but we acted on the idea, which is a disgrace to my country. Thank you very much. And I happen to be acquainted with a survivor, and, they have very strong opinions about these sorts of things, and I can understand why. Oh my god. So, it's a little bit upsetting if that one in particular, I shouldn't even say in particular, but if that one, which is pretty easy, all things considered, if that has not been implemented, I'm going to be very, very cross. But for the last video on this series, I'm going to be looking, as I say, into the ones that actually have been acted upon, and I hope this one is on the list. Because, like I say, this one's easy. Alright, moving on. My brain is awake, yay! Alright, number 82. We call upon provincial and territorial governments, in collaboration with survivors and their organizations, and other parties to the settlement agreement, to commission and install a publicly accessible, highly visible residential schools monument in each capital city to honor survivors and all the children who were lost to their families and communities. Rinse and repeat on the provincial scale. This is a good one too, because, as I say, each province has its own individual capital. Just think of your states. If you're American, it's the same exact concept, okay? So these monuments are needed throughout every capital in Canada. We've got 13 of them plus Ottawa. All right, so if this were, by the way, to be implemented in America, same thing to a larger scale, because you have more states, more than provinces that we have, you thereby have more capitals. I'm not going to assume that everyone in my audience is American, but I kind of come online with two interesting and often false assumptions. Number one, everyone I speak to is an American. Number two, everyone I speak to is around my age. Not always the case. But yeah, this one's really, really important because it's not just Ottawa getting involved, therefore. It is the mandate coming down to the provincial level and us recognizing that this happened not in Ottawa, but throughout the entire country. And I have said before, this country on its own is big enough to be a continent, okay? 4 Europes would fit into North America. 4 Europes, okay? And we all agree that Europe is a pretty diverse place. So is North America. Just the problem is, our diversity was destroyed by colonialism. I shouldn't even say our diversity. The diversity that was here before people like me got here. That wasn't me being mean to me kind of slap, just white skin people, okay? So we deny history by continuing to deny what happened in history and the importance of a highly accessible, highly tangible, sensible monument set up in each capital. Very important in the process of not denying what happened. People have the right to know, and people have the right to act upon their knowledge. Maximizing document. Bam. All right, number 83. We call upon the Canada Council for the Arts to establish as a founding priority a strategy for Indigenous and non-Indigenous artists to undertake collaborative projects and produce works that contribute to the reconciliation process. Yes, please. Yes, please. More people working together, inter-community communication and work. This is the best way to build right relations with each other because everybody likes art, Everybody likes music. You can't tell me you don't because you haven't seen it all in the case of art, or you haven't felt it all in the case of art. You haven't heard it all in the case of music. You cannot tell me you do not like XYZ when it comes to the arts because you haven't seen it all yet. You haven't, experienced it all, right? So it's really important for people who have these diverse talents, and I'm speaking from experience here because I can sing and I can kind of play piano, sort of. People with diverse talents should get together to make magic happen, because to me, that's what the arts are. I was always an arts and humanities person, never really a maths person. I'm okay with the sciences, but the arts are what speak to me. Music, visual art, literature, all these different things that we can delve into as various communities working in collaboration with one another to create the right narrative, not to erase the narrative of the past, the one that ought to have been there, not to continue to erase that, okay? It is through the arts that we evoke emotion. If you haven't noticed, 2 + 2 = 4 doesn't really evoke much emotion, but if you go and see, I don't know, Starry Night from Van Gogh, or if you hear, I don't know, Moonlight Sonata from Beethoven, it's probably going to do stuff to you because our brains are kind of wired towards the arts in the emotional sense. So it is in our capacity for emotion, for understanding, and for collaboration that's the ground that we need to work on, because that's the most powerful ground, I think. And maximization. All right, new heading. Media and reconciliation. This could get juicy. All right. Number 84. We call upon the federal government to restore and increase funding to the CBC/Radio Canada to enable Canada's national public broadcaster to support reconciliation and be properly reflective of the diverse cultures, languages, and perspectives of Aboriginal peoples, including but not limited to 1. Increasing Aboriginal programming, including Aboriginal language speakers. 2. Increasing equitable access for Aboriginal peoples to jobs, leadership positions, and professional development opportunities within the organization. 3. Continuing to provide dedicated news coverage and online public information resources on issues of concern to Aboriginal peoples and all Canadians, including the history and legacy of residential schools and the reconciliation process. Okay. I'm going to go down memory lane for a moment. So, back in, I believe it was November of 2019, my dad comes home one day. He'd been listening to the CBC in his van. He drives people to, medical appointments for a living, okay? Non-emergency medical transport, basically. He was listening to the CBC in his van, and he comes home and says, "You have to check this guy out. I think you would really like him. I heard him on the CBC radio. They have this Aboriginal hour, basically. It's an hour wherein they play Aboriginal music, right?" He gives me the name of Mr. Jeremy Dutcher. Heard one freaking note come out of that man's mouth, and I was sold. Sold! Immediately, he was my favorite artist. That's the kind of shit we're talking about, okay? Here's the thing about the CBC. For anyone who doesn't know, CBC, Canada Broadcast Corporation, is a nationwide radio station and television channel as well. I was led to believe that they are left-leaning. They're actually kind of not. I was told by my survivor friend that if I wanted actual Aboriginal news, go on APTN Um, Aboriginal Program Television Network, I think is what that stands for. I would have to look that up again. But if you have that in your country, look it up. Basically, the CBC, they tend to have more diverse news coverage of what's going on nationwide. But even then, lately, especially, they have not been focusing on the residential school crisis that has been going on up here in Canada. They might play more Aboriginal artists than you would hear on more mainstream radio, shall we say, but the CBC, other than that, I think it's kind of them paying lip service to the whole idea of Canada is inclusive. We are not, okay? Like, there's a difference between labeling yourself as inclusive and actually acting upon it. And I think that, to only have an hour a day in which to play this niche kind of music, I think that that's just another way of paying lip service to this whole issue. The idea that this music is niche, this music is other, the narrative of the othering. I've talked about this before, the whole narrative of us versus them. I don't like that. So rather than having this set time slot, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. or whatever it is, wherever you are, intersperse it throughout the day like you would with any other kind of music, and it, in my mind anyway, it shouldn't just be the CBC, but there are a lot of radio stations, obviously, that just play the top 40. And I'm okay with that, I guess. They're just not... I have higher standards, okay? Right? This is me completely 100% poking fun at myself, but it's also true. Like, we should be exposed to more than we are, because here's the problem. If our boxes get small, and we don't concern ourselves with how small our box is getting, we get COVID brain, which is basically what I'm terming the whole turn towards introversion that people are experiencing because of social isolation. This is intellectual isolation. And to me, that is, I believe they're called epistemic crimes. An epistemic crime is withholding knowledge from someone, or controlling what they are allowed to know, or only telling them certain things, okay? That's an epistemic crime in that you are cutting them off from what they could experience, okay? So I'm not saying that everyone needs to go out and learn to speak every single different language on earth, and everyone needs to go out and start making music and art in every genre. That's not going to happen, because it's not reasonable, it's not feasible. But we should at least make an attempt to expose ourselves to people's cultures, ways of life, art forms that do not belong just to us, shall we say, okay? And that is my hyper tangent about that, but this is Little Miss Arts and Humanities. And I find that the two often go hand in hand. There can be philosophies around art, there can be arts around philosophies, and it's a beautiful thing. Maximizing. All right, 85, last for today. Number 85. We call upon the Aboriginal People's Television Network. That was it, APTN. Okay, we call upon APTN as an independent, non-profit broadcaster with programming by, for, and about Aboriginal peoples, see what I mean, to support reconciliation, including but not limited to, 1, continuing to provide leadership in programming and organized... My screen jumped, I'm sorry. Continuing to provide leadership in programming and organizational culture that reflects the diverse cultures, languages, and perspectives of Aboriginal peoples. 2, continuing to develop media initiatives that inform and educate the Canadian public and connect Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal Canadians. This is what we're talking about, mama. This is what we're talking about. See, this is where APTN leaves the CBC in the dust. because the CBC was basically made by and for white people. Not a good look, okay? And APTN, I do believe, was made by and for Indigenous peoples, which is a better look when yours is the narrative that has been suppressed literally for hundreds of years on this continent. So, in collaboration with them, we need to kind of come out of our little, we're definitely left, we're definitely progressive box that could be created for us by the CBC and actually talk to the people about, are we really? Are we really as well-informed? Are we really as diverse? Are we really as open-minded as we believe we are? I'm not just saying that this is a problem with the CBC. This is a problem with our entire culture, quite frankly. And as I say, it is not reasonable nor feasible to go out and learn every language under the sun and to, make art from every genre. That's not what we're asking here. I'm just asking for people to attempt to open their minds to perspectives that they are not familiar with. This is a really important one in Canada. I shouldn't even say especially right now, but especially right now because of the crisis, as I say, that's been going on with residential schools, which the CBC is not reporting about. And that, I think, is where the CBC falls short, big time, because this needs to be known. As I say, it's an epistemic crime to withhold knowledge that people should have, okay? It would be like never teaching your child how to tie their shoes or never teaching someone that 2 and 2 make 4. It's just these very basic things that we should know and that would benefit our lives to know. But we're prevented from knowing them because the streams of knowledge coming into us could be very slight, very narrow, and we're not even aware of how narrow they are until we look beyond them. So, how do you look beyond them? And this is where I love the internet. Thank God for the internet. Because honestly, without the internet, I'd be screwed. I really would. I wouldn't even be able to read the TRC without the internet, I don't think. I don't know whether it's available in the library or whatever, but without the internet too, I wouldn't even know that I needed to read the TRC. I would have swallowed wholesale what they gave me in school, the narrative about Indigenous people that they gave me in school. Louis Riel, bad guy. Tecumseh, good guy. And that's about it, and that's not even true, okay? I don't know about Tecumseh, but Riel was not a bad guy, okay? Do your reading online, and don't censor yourself either. Don't say to yourself, I will go this far and no further. Don't just get your toes wet. Go dive in. I'm attempting to dive in. Not a very good swimmer, but, to torture a metaphor, I'm using my friends as life preservers. In the literal sense, too, by the way. In the real world, I'm not a good swimmer. You throw me into the water, I will panic. But when you throw me into intellectual waters, it's kind of fun. So long as I have people to help me in fields where I am not familiar. Like this. All right, so that's all for today, folks. That's all, folks. And I will see y'all tomorrow to talk about the next 5. As I say, I apologize for Friday, but you didn't want me making a video on Friday. Thank you. All right, talk to y'all tomorrow. Love you. Mwah. Bye.